Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for our session on building professional relationships in a virtual environment. This is part of our summer job search series, coming to you from the American University Career Center on our virtual office location. I'm going to give just a couple more minutes for people to arrive, but I do appreciate your timeliness and I don't want to keep you waiting. So we will start relatively soon. And during this session today, I encourage you to ask questions in the chat box. And if you wish to, you can come off mute and ask directly if that's easier for you. I want to make it as useful as possible for everyone today. Okay, thank you all for coming today. My name is John Charles. I am a career advisor for students in the School of International Service and the College of Arts and Sciences at American University. Now, today's session is meant to help you figure out effective ways of communicating with people in a virtual environment. Of course, we've all been stuck at home or stuck away from campus for the past year and a half almost. And it has created some challenges when we think of outreach and networking to people in the job world, the working world. So I hope that what I present today was helpful to you, but I want to make sure that it's not just my ideas presented here. And I hope that if there's something in particular that you would like to get from this session, please, please, please let me know. Again, in the chat box, or you can come off of mute and just verbalize it. We have a small crowd today live, and so that would be the best way to communicate. All right. So what I'm going to do is, in today's session, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on a PowerPoint, not much, just to go over some topics that are relevant and that also touch on other aspects of your job and internship search. And then I'm going to ask you to do a short activity. And then at the end, I'll allow you to ask questions directly, maybe follow up if there was any information that was not perfectly clear. The centerpiece of today's event is text, wording that you will be able to use when you send messages to people for networking purposes. So my excellent colleague, Samantha Mitchell, has attached that document in the chat and has done so once again. Thank you so much, Sam. And that is something that you can take away with you after this session. Okay, so let me just go ahead. I'm going to walk you through this PowerPoint very briefly, and let me see here. Okay. Give me a moment as I go back to the beginning. So here we are today, talking about building professional relationships in a virtual world. And I'm that guy, John Charles. So in our agenda, it's simple. We want to know what to say and to whom. And then I have a short brainstorm activity for identifying people that might be helpful to you. And then, of course, audience questions. So I am a career advisor, as I said, for the School of International Service and the College of Arts and Sciences. My colleagues and I are available, pardon the typo, to meet with you this summer before classes start. Primarily over Zoom, but if you prefer, we can also do phone appointments as well. What should I be doing? So some of the things that you should be doing in your job search are broader than simply networking, right? And so I just want to go over my colleague, Julia Bayer, made this PowerPoint for us, and I'm grateful to her for doing so. I just want to go quickly over what are some of the other areas of your job search that you might want to pay attention to. We send out a newsletter through Handshake. You can look on Handshake for jobs. Quad Jobs is a place that you can find paid positions that might be part-time, things like tutoring or babysitting. LinkedIn Learning is a great way for you to learn about new topics. Let's say you want to learn about data analysis. That's where you would go. And this is all available through your Handshake account. Alumni Fire is sort of a curated American University LinkedIn. So it's smaller than LinkedIn, but it's focused on our alumni. And that might be a nice tool for you as well to use for your networking. We have, of course, the American University page on LinkedIn, which is a good place to start. And then for those of you who have federal work study eligibility, we have an off-campus Federal Work Study Fair. This means off-campus positions. And that's Wednesday, August 18th from 2 to 4 p.m. And that will be hosted in Handshake as a virtual event. And then the on-campus Federal Work Study Fair, so that's positions located on campus, will be Wednesday, August 25th from 12 noon to 3 p.m. This is also virtual. This one, though, will be on Zoom. And there are several other virtual tools. I'll talk very briefly about one of them, Big Interview. I really like Big Interview. It's a way for you to answer questions and record answers using this tool called Big Interview. Great practice for you. The thing with interviews is typically we don't get so many of them. Even someone like me who's been in the workforce for many years, I have not had a ton of interviews in my life. So to get better at interviews, it would be important for me to practice, right? And so Big Interview is the tool that you can use to practice. And there's various other, for depending on what school you're from, there are different newsletters that you can learn about job opportunities from. And then this page is We Know Success. It's an American University page that shows you where our graduates have gone on to work. This could be very helpful for you in your networking, in your research for jobs and job searching. And then our Office of Merit Awards, I always want to put in a plug for them. These are the folks who help you win national scholarships and fellowships. Some of the opportunities they have are during your time at AU, but others are also for postgraduate opportunities. And then our big event is our job and internship fair. It is still virtual. It will be through the Handshake platform once again, September 23rd from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern. So please put that in your calendar now. There's a little bit of information still about career planning during COVID-19. Things are changing, but not completely so, right? And that's part of the reason why virtual professional contact building is important still. And then for those of you who are early on in your career, it's great if you can meet with a career advisor right away at American University. But if you haven't yet, I don't want you to feel bad about it, right? The best time to come is when you're ready, which could be now, right? And so these are just a few items that Julie had included. It might pertain to some of you, not to everybody. And then we also have resources for first-generation students, transfer students, active military veterans, and international students. Multicultural community, LGBTQA, and undocumented students. And I mentioned LinkedIn Learning. So these are some typical topical ones, okay? And our summer job search series is soon coming to a close. On Wednesday, tomorrow, the 14th, Federal Resumes will be the next one. And keep in mind, if you are not watching this live and you're just looking at the video afterward, all of these will be at some point available on video. Okay, thank you for your patience in letting me go through those documents. Now, so I know that we had some questions. I want to make sure that, okay, it looks like everything is taken care of. As I said, please ask any questions you have, and put them in the chat, or go off mute and talk to me here. So I mentioned that we have a very simple agenda today, and really it is going to be focused on how you reach out to people in the working world with whom you want to network. Now, people in my position, career advisors, I think sometimes we're guilty of not making it clear exactly how you reach out, how you network. We'll say, yes, you should network, reach out, talk to people. And I know there might be some confusion. And if any of you have ever felt that, I feel for you, because it's not enough simply to say, do this big general kind of thing, which is networking. It's important, I believe, for us to give you a little bit of specificity as far as what to say exactly for certain situations. That's why I created the document that Samantha shared earlier, but I'm going to share my screen so we can all look at it together. Just one moment. And thank you. Sam informs me that she did email it to everyone, so that's fantastic. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to share my screen of the document, and I thought that I had it open, and I actually didn't have it open. So let me try once more. Of course, right when I practice doing this, and then right when I try to find it, I'm unable to. Okay, just a second. I've got it on my desktop. Let me see now if I can share my screen. Thank you so much for your patience. It is much appreciated. Here we go. So I gave you different scenarios for what to say with certain kinds of people. Now, we could go on, and if you like, we can come up with different types of people that you might want to reach out to. But I want to talk about the first one. So this is a common one, right? So let's say you have been told by your career advisor, you need to network. Okay, here's the first thing you can do. You can talk to a former professor for ideas and introductions. So here's how you might word this message. Dear Professor Jones, I hope you have had an enjoyable summer. I was able to travel back home to Albuquerque to spend a couple weeks with my family, which was so nice. I'm writing to you to ask for some advice in my job search. I figured out that I want to gain experience in sustainable agriculture and wonder, can you recommend organizations that might offer semester-long internships? Would you be able to introduce me to any former students of yours who are working in sustainable agriculture? Thank you for any advice you might offer. I enjoyed learning about the food industry in your Systems of Sustainability Skills Institute. It changed my career direction. Best regards, Randall Smith, 202-885-4215. I just want to, for a moment, and feel free, if you have any thoughts or questions about this, please, you can include it in the chat. I want to tell you why I wrote this the way I did. So first of all, why does it matter that Randall is telling the professor that, they went back to Albuquerque? Well, you know what? We've all had a tough time, right? We've been away from family, friends. It's just a nice touch to include something personal like that. And that's why I think it's important. We're not saying a whole lot. We're not spilling any personal, information, but we're just giving a little bit to sort of make that connection to the person a little bit stronger. And of course, this is a former professor, so there is already a personal connection. And now, so the other, you'll notice in that second paragraph, I am writing to you to ask for some advice in my job search. This is the specificity, right? So why are you writing? Randall is writing to ask for some advice in the job search. So this is really important, that you tell the person what you're looking for, right? Don't make them guess. Make it clear and just state it right away. All right. And so the specific questions are also very clear, right? Can you recommend organizations that might offer semester-long internships? Would you be able to introduce me to any former students of yours who are working in sustainable agriculture? So by being very clear, by being very specific, we allow Professor Jones to understand immediately how they might be of help to Randall. This is very, very important. Specificity, clarity. And so that's one takeaway that I want you to have from this session. Now, this last part about I enjoyed your Skills Institute, it changed my career direction. Certainly don't say anything that's not true, right? We don't want to butter up the professor just, as sort of like this kind of transactional action, right? Do it if it's true, but it's nice, right? Isn't it nice for this professor to hear that? Would be, I think, a really neat thing. So that's why I've included that. Now, the phone number is also for ease of communication. You want to think about how people can get in touch with you. Okay, so we just have two more. I'm gonna show you this next one. So this is a message to a classmate asking for an introduction. The introduction could be via email or it could be on LinkedIn. Hi, Susan, you might remember me. I am Bill Smith's friend who lived in Centennial last year. It's amazing to think how quickly our time at AU has sped by and that we are seniors now. I noticed in LinkedIn that you are connected to Beth Johnson at ABC Pharmaceuticals. From her experience, I believe that she would be able to help me strategize my post-graduation job search. Would you be willing to introduce me to her on LinkedIn? Here's some wording you could use if you like. Jerry is a biology major who is interned for GlaxoSmithKline and was a TA for Bio 101. He is trying to figure out which part of the pharmaceutical industry might fit and thought that your insight would be helpful. He tells me that he hopes to choose between infectious disease meds and cancer treatments and would like to ask for your perspective. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Much appreciated, Jerry Anderson. So here's someone who's a peer, right? This is a peer, maybe someone who graduated last year. It's not, well, actually they're a senior, right? So they're also both going to be graduating. So Jerry knows someone who Susan knows somebody who Jerry would like to meet. And do you see what Jerry does? Jerry explains exactly why. So again, specificity, just be above board, just be very clear why you're asking. And politely asking, right? Would you be willing? Okay, so it's a nice ask. Now, the wording. Why is this wording important? The wording is important because then for the introduction, Susan can simply take that text and include it. So it is written in the third person. I mean, you could write it in the first person and then Susan could just include that. It's not a big deal either way. By including this text, though, it makes it clearer to Beth Johnson at ABC Pharmaceuticals, who is this person? Why is this person contacting me? And again, it's clear about saying what Beth Johnson might be able to say to Jerry. Okay, so again, very clear, very polite, but there's no confusion. Okay, so that's the second example. So now for the third and final one. So let's say you have a neighbor back in your hometown. You want to ask for advice. So here's a possibility. Dear Ms. Sensom, I hope you and the family are doing well. I'm graduating from American University in December, and I wanted to ask if you would be willing to have a 30-minute Zoom call with me in the coming days. You might remember that I was studying political science in my early career at AU. Well, I made a switch in major and am completing my degree in business administration. While I enjoy the world of government, I decided that I really enjoy understanding how businesses work and market their products. What I hope to discuss is what a post-pandemic world looks like for a private business owner like you. How do you respond to all the changes we've seen and can expect to see for your store moving into the future? Hearing about the daily decisions you make will help me decide whether or not to take a plunge into my own business. I know you are busy. Here are some days and times I'm available. Do any work for you? Tuesday, July 27th, all day. Wednesday, July 28th, afternoon. Thursday, July 29th, all day. Thank you so much for your consideration. Regards, Terry Alvarez, 808-425-5511. Okay, What do I want to point out in this example? A couple of things. One is 30-minute Zoom call, right? I didn't say hour long or even a 45-minute, 30-minute, because 30 minutes is enough time to talk to someone and get good information. But it's not so much time that it's going to put a crimp in their daily schedule. So it's realistic, right? It's thoughtful. Now, this person is a neighbor, right? So not someone you know that well. So in this case, we have the polite address, right? Ms. Sansom. And maybe, this explanation of changing major is perhaps because they haven't talked much. And so this is just filling in. It's sort of information background, right? Now, again, the specificity, right? This is what I want to talk about is what is it like to be a business owner? And so this helps Ms. Sansom understand what the request is, okay? And this is the part that I wanted to really feature, putting specific days and times to meet so that this prevents sort of too much back and forth. Sometimes you email someone, they go, oh, what about this time? What about that time? By putting the available days and times up front, it makes it, again, easier for the recipient, Ms. Sansom, to be able to find maybe a time, oh yeah, Thursday, great. And also give enough time ahead of time, right? So maybe these are dates that are about 2 weeks into the future. So you want to be thoughtful about giving people enough time to respond, because they might not respond right away via, if it's email, but especially if it's LinkedIn, sometimes people are not very quick to respond. So those are the examples that I wanted to share. And I hope that this can be useful for you as far as what you do when you communicate with someone on LinkedIn, via email, or maybe you meet someone at a party. Maybe there's a summer party. We're all happy to be outside and to be gathering again. The follow-up could be a message like the ones I've just shown you. So let me just pause for a moment and ask, does anybody have any questions about this? Is there anything you're unsure about? Or is there a situation that I didn't detail in these 3 messages that you would like help doing? Like maybe as a different kind of a person and maybe you're not sure what to say. So feel free, you can type it in the chat, or again, come off mute. I encourage you to do that and just to state your question or comment. Anybody? I'll give you just a couple of beats. Great, thank you. Nia asked a question. What approach would you recommend for reaching out to strangers or AU alum? So strangers, that's a very good one. It's a little more difficult, isn't it? Because there's no prior history, there's no knowledge. I generally tell people what's ideal is to get an introduction. So if it's someone you don't know, if there's someone you know who knows the target person, that's ideal. And it's also more likely to result in a response from the targeted person. Now, if that's not possible, sometimes you just don't know anybody who knows this particular person you'd like to meet. It's perfectly fine to do. So in the old days, when it was a telephone call, we'd call it a cold call. So here we can call it a cold email or a cold LinkedIn message. Perfectly fine. I know I had a student years ago, an SIS student, who did this technique and was very successful. And the people he would message on LinkedIn were very impressed that he wasn't fearful for doing it. Sometimes it does cause some anxiety to do it. So I know that we all come from different sort of perspectives and comfort levels. So if you are comfortable doing it, by all means, reach out. And then, so if it is an alum, so ideally you would find them through LinkedIn or Alumni Fire. There's a little bit more, so there's that AU connection, right? And that counts for something. So again, of course, be polite, but feel free and don't hesitate to reach out to alum, okay? And great, Charity asks, is it necessary to give background info on yourself, just like how the person talked about what they did over the summer? It's not necessary. So the reason why I think it's nice to do that is, especially if it's someone you know, it's building that bond, right? If you don't feel comfortable sharing that kind of information, then don't, right? It's more about sort of, when you think about relationships, and this session is building virtual relationships. Let's be honest, virtual relationships are not real relationships. And so we're doing whatever we can to strengthen the tie with that person. Now, in the case that I gave you, the student had the class in person, I'm assuming, before the pandemic, perhaps. So that's the reason for sharing information. But again, always never do something that doesn't feel right to you. So if you feel, for whatever reason, like that's private, I don't want people to know, then don't. Do what you can, though, to try to bridge the distance. And when I talk about distance, I'm talking about the distance from like being in person or not being in person, which can be difficult. All right. So that's why I worded it that way. But again, these are templates. These are sort of ideas for you. I want you to take these, modify them, or throw them out and build your own that makes sense for you, right? But the idea is we come back to specificity, clarity, simplicity, ease. We want to make it easy for people to want to get to know you. And by being simplest or simple, by being specific and by being clear, that's going to make them more willing to be in touch with you. Great questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now, what I want to do is, we're not going to take the whole hour for this session, but I do have the one activity I promised you. So I want to fulfill my promise. What I want you to do is, if you have a blank piece of paper, would you mind just finding a space on your desk to write with it? It can be an 8.5, 11, it can be bigger. So what you might be able to see on here is, we call this like a mind map. Basically, it's just a visual that has words. We have lines that extend from a central place. My mind map that I made earlier was, I worked with a student who was trying to find an internship on a specific topic. And so there's different tasks that go into finding an internship, right? You have to do research to learn what organizations do this kind of work, what positions there are. And then there's the outreach, right? Networking, where we want to ask people who might help us. So we might ask professors, we might ask neighbors, we might ask friends. And that's what I have written on this sheet. Would you please, at this time, we'll spend only a couple minutes on this, really. I would like you to, in the center, figure out, so what is your immediate goal? Is it a fall internship? Is it a spring internship? Is it a job after graduation? Is it learning about a new area of study? Maybe you changed majors and you want to learn something new. Whatever that is, put it in the middle of your page, and you can make some kind of a graphic. This is just a blob. You might want to choose a diamond or a heart or whatever moves you. And then what I'd like you to do is, let's begin a brainstorm and thinking about, since our focus is on building professional relationships, let's focus on the outreach aspect. So who could you reach out to get some more information? So we can think in categories, right? Professors, neighbors, friends, relatives, sports team fellow members, fellow campers from back in the day. You can think in categories, or if you prefer, just come up with names. And so what I'd like you to do, let's spend a minute doing this. I want you to write down some of the people who come to mind. And then you can take this along with the wording document that you received, and you can begin to do some of this outreach. Does that sound like a plan? So I'm going to be quiet for just a moment here. And while you're working on that, if anyone has any questions, please, again, you can put the information in the chat and I can respond to it that way. All right, so just a little bit longer and then we'll come back together. All right. I know it's a relatively short time, but I want to make sure that we keep things moving. Could I ask, is there anybody who would be willing to talk about what they wrote, or if any ideas came up or anything that you'd like to share? Again, feel free. You can come off mute or you can just type it in the chat box. By the way, what I wrote down is what is the next step, right? So reach out to people, make specific requests, be clear, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then I'm also going to put in, if you have any follow-up questions, I am going to put my email in the chat box and you can email me as well. Okay. Do we have any takers, any volunteers who would be willing to share what you wrote down, or if there are any ideas that were spurred on by this activity, or if there's anything from the session that you think you're going to be able to do moving forward, and that might help all the others to also think about ways they could do the same things. So feel free, you can type it in the chat or you can come off mute and say it out loud. Okay, looks like we don't have anything else. So what I would like to finish today with is questions. Now, I know you might not have any particular questions, but again, I encourage you, because if you have a question, I know that someone else does, and it'll be helpful to other people as well to hear that question. And the question could be anything such as, well, John, these ideas make sense, but so what is blocking you? There's something that blocks people. Maybe I'm too shy, or I tried LinkedIn and nobody responded, or things like that. So I encourage you, if there's any blockages, anything that's sort of an obstacle, please, let's bring those out, because we need to address those for all of us. Okay, so thank you so much. There's a question. I wanted to find out what the freshmen, what should be the first thing we look out for? Should it be jobs or internships? That's a great question. Adu before. Sorry if I mangled your name. That's a great question, because there's always the uncertainty of, when I start college, how soon should I get an intern? Should I get an internship right away? Should I wait? Should I, do something else? Here's my recommendation, actually. So for a first-year student, I always say, actually, don't get an internship right away, for a couple of reasons. One being, college is more than career preparation. College is about making friends, about living away from home. It's about adapting to a new life and about becoming an adult, right? It's the transition between youth and adulthood. So I recommend that in your first year in college, that you spend time joining student clubs, that you volunteer in the community, that you do things that get you closer to Washington, D.C., to the American University community. And then later you can worry about an internship. So often it means maybe an internship sophomore year, or for some people, it's junior year, actually. Now, I'm not saying don't get an internship. I know people have different motivations, but I encourage you not to feel that there's pressure to jump into an internship. Maybe a job. I know many students I work with have to earn money. And so a paying job is really what takes priority. And I get it. And that's perfectly fine. And that's good experience too, because you are learning to be responsible, to take initiative, and to support yourself. So great question. Thanks. Another one is, what do you do if they just recommend looking on the career pages? Oh, I get it. So for example, I think what Nia is pointing out too is this has happened at our career fairs where often it was a federal agency representative would say, oh, you want to learn more about our agency? Go to the webpage and you can read about our agency. Not the answer that the students were looking for. I get it. So if someone recommends that you look at the career page, what it really means is a couple of possibilities. One, I'm too busy, sorry, I just don't have time. Or two, I don't know, it might not be the right person for you to talk to. So don't give up. Don't be frustrated if someone basically rejects your overture. That happens. Don't be frustrated when people don't respond. That happens too. Actually, I had a LinkedIn message that was sent on Saturday, and unfortunately, I didn't see it. It was actually from a former neighbor, because I hadn't been on LinkedIn over the weekend. So bear in mind that some people are on LinkedIn, some people are not. In some cases, it might be better to email someone. But the main point here is keep moving forward. So you don't hear from someone, okay, let's message someone else. It really is a numbers game. It's about volume, and a percentage of people will respond. It might be a small percentage. You might get responses from only, I don't know, 12% of people. So what that means is, if you want to get 12 responses, you might have to reach out to 100 people. So again, don't be frustrated. Don't make that seem as if it's an obstacle that can't be overcome. That can be overcome. Just adjust your expectations, okay? And keep in mind, we talked about those introductions. I guarantee you'll have a higher percentage response to an introduction where someone who the target person knows has introduced you. That will have a much higher likelihood of garnering a response than if you just message someone directly by yourself. Okay? Great. Thank you so much for those questions. And I see there's other questions. I'm glad in the question and answer section. Clarissa asks, there are some professors that I want to reach out to at AU, but can definitely get intimidated when thinking about how much they have accomplished, whereas I have not had real experience yet in my desired field, which happens to be national security, investigation, cybersecurity. This is fantastic. That's a fantastic question. And here's another, let me turn this around. Professors are there to teach you, right? To instruct you, to inform you. They're also there to support you and to guide you. So if a professor is intimidating, it might just be because of the way that they present themselves, right? I believe, though, underneath whatever intimidation factor is at work, they want to help, okay? So do your homework, right? Show yourself to be prepared when you make a request, but make the request. And If it's not met with support, then, well, maybe it's just time to try someone else. You got it? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to assume that they are, you know, people who aren't going to help. Maybe they will, but it just, in our own minds, we're kind of stuck on the idea that these are scary people. I was the same way. When I was in college, I was afraid to go talk to my professors. And then I realized, wow, they're just like everybody else. Maybe a little bit different from the rest of us, but no, they're good people. Okay. And then the other one is, where can I look to find contact information for people working at federal agencies like DHS, FBI, et cetera? And what can I say to them to receive helpful information? So there is a little bit of a challenge here. So federal workers, federal employees, staffers who work for agencies that, let's say, are in the security, national security and intelligence realm, they are not likely to be on LinkedIn. They typically are instructed not to use social media. They have to be careful about information they put out into the world. So what you might have to do with some of these people, it's actually just a little bit of a tweak. You might need to identify them, perhaps through campus events, presentations, and email for these people is typically okay. So if you can identify them and perhaps participate in campus events. So the Career Center provides, we have these events called Employer in Residence, which means they're not really here all the time, but they visit maybe like 1 week, they'll come a couple of days and have appointments set up, one-on-one appointments to meet with students. That might be the best way to get to know one of these types of federal employees. I hope that helps, okay? Thank you so much for all your questions. I'm gonna wrap things up right now. And thank you again to Samantha Mitchell for supporting me in this presentation. You can go to the link that I think Sam has just included, and that gives information about recruitment events where what I just described, for example, Employer in Residence, there's others as well. So by all means, take advantage of those. And if you wish, if you have follow-up questions for me, I'm happy to answer those for you. And remember, so just to kind of close the loop here, the important thing to think about in virtual relationships is that it's not ideal, but it's not impossible, right? We would prefer to meet people in person, and we're going to have that opportunity to do so in the coming weeks and months. At the same time, it's also important to leverage the tools we have, such as email, LinkedIn, Alumni Fire, to get to connect and get to know people. So the challenge is finding some way to connect, right? Some way to get your communication through. I think if you use some of the examples and some of the techniques I mentioned for messaging people, that will improve the odds that you will get a response. And again, always be polite, always make a request that's not overly burdensome, that's not asking for too much. And those will be very useful and helpful for you. Okay. Thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate your time today, whether you're here live or watching the video. We hope that you can build on your professional networks so that you will thrive and find opportunities in your future that meet your goals and your desires. Thank you again. Take care. And it's been really fun to have you here today. All right, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.